And now I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. Stephanie Baloris is Vice President, Research Director for Forrester Research, serving security and risk professionals. She leads a team of analysts who provide research and advisory services on topics like IT security frameworks, governance, risk and compliance, identity and access management, application security, data security, and IT infrastructure security. She also provides Forrester's coverage of specific risk topics, including business continuity, IT continuity, disaster recovery, and backup and recovery. Stephanie has more than 12 years of experience in BCDR, backup and recovery, and information storage industries. Prior to joining the security and risk team, Stephanie was a principal analyst on Forrester's infrastructure and operations team, where she was instrumental in the development of Forrester's research and offerings in continuity, availability, and information storage and protection. Prior to joining Forrester, Stephanie was a senior analyst with Yankee Group, where she provided insight on technology trends to key system, storage, and information protection vendors, and consultative advice on strategic and tactical initiatives. Before Yankee Group, Stephanie worked at EMC, first as a technical architect and then as a senior education and productivity consultant. As a technical architect, she articulated EMC's value to partners and customers and designed solutions to meet customer and new market opportunities. As an education and productivity consultant, she managed and supported complex technical training programs for business and practice managers in EMC's Technology Solutions Group. And prior to EMC, Stephanie worked at Accenture as a consultant, focusing on the implementation of business applications, SAP and PeopleSoft, for global business. Stephanie holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and finance and investments from Babson College. After Stephanie's presentation, we'll be hearing from Claudia Dent, Vice President of Product Management at Everbridge. Claudia has many years of experience in the technology industry and has held executive positions in product management, marketing, business development, and general management at companies ranging from startups to large global enterprises. And we're excited and honored to have both of our speakers with us here today. So now I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter. Stephanie, you may begin.
Okay, great. Thanks, Erin. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining me today. So for my portion of the presentation, I wanted to accomplish three things. First, I want to talk about a lot of the challenges that I'm seeing in incident management and response today. Then what I'd like to do after that is talk about the benefits of automated communication in improving incident response and reducing mean time to resolution. And then following that, if you are thinking that you do want to invest in this type of solution as part of your incident management processes, what are some of the key selection criteria that you would actually look for if you were evaluating vendors? And these are the same selection criteria and advice that I give Forrester clients, so I want to share that with everyone. So basically broken up into three parts. So let's go ahead and get started. So incident management challenges, I want to start off with a provocative question, which is, from a customer's perspective, what is the difference between power outages, natural disaster, an IT failure, or even a DDoS attack against somebody's website that takes it down? The reality is, this is what I believe, and I think this is what most of Forrester believes and is putting forth, is, in today's age of the customer, where customers have a powerful voice, they have more choice, they have more information at their fingertips to make different types of selection options, they actually don't have much patience for any kind of downtime. They have very, very high standards for availability. They really don't care whether it was one of these natural disasters, it's a volcano erupting, it's a hurricane, it's a tornado, it's a DDoS attack, it's a power failure. They actually don't care what caused the downtime. They expect your services to be up and available, and if they're not, they're going to move to a competitor. And you may win them back, but it's going to take a lot of time, money, and effort to really do that. So increasingly, they don't care. And what it means for IT pros responsible for incident management is you've really got to blend day-to-day incidents, things that normally would have caused component failures within the data center, or even just a major disaster. You've got to treat them all as incidents that are going to come into your service desk. You're going to have to deal with them and get the company back up and running. And that's what the business is going to demand from you as well. And increasingly, not that there's going to be the same SLAs for every one of those types of incidents, but what will be different now is that there's not going to be a different SLA for high availability and a different SLA for DR. There's just going to be one SLA for availability. So that's how things are changing, and that's how I think we as IT professionals have to change our perspective, which is we can't make a difference in all these different types of incidents. We just have to treat them all as sources of downtime. Interestingly enough, there's also this perception, I think, sometimes, particularly of disaster recovery, that it's an inexpensive insurance policy for rare catastrophic events. The interesting thing is one, disaster declarations and major disruptions are actually more frequent than most enterprises would expect. Over 60% of companies have experienced an actual disaster declaration or a major business disruption, something that's more than just a few minutes or even just a couple hours long, like a major disruption. And if you look at the causes, it actually tends to be very common events. It tends to be things like power failures, various types of IT failures, hardware, software, network, telecommunication, you name it. And actually a lot of downtime is actually caused by human error. It could be unintentional errors where somebody makes a configuration mistake, coding mistake, upgrade fails, you name it. A lot of it is derived from human error. So just a couple points here, which is one, major disruptions are not rare. They're quite frequent. And they're always caused, not always, but it's really the common stuff that gets you. You still have to plan for the big stuff, but it's really the common everyday, or sometimes what I call like mundane incidents that really get most organizations. And we have to really prepare for those thoroughly. Now, when you think about downtime, there's a major impact on revenue. There's going to be an impact on customer retention. There's going to be a major impact on your reputation. Now, over time, you might actually be able to recover revenue. It's not always permanently lost. Some of it's deferrable. You'll gain it back once you get back online. You can win customers back through effort. Eventually, potentially months, maybe even years, your reputation will repair itself. But again, all those things take effort. But interestingly enough, one of the most immediate impacts of downtime is actually on employee productivity and employee morale. You can see the data here on the slide. When we ask companies that have experienced these disaster declarations and these downtime, what was the biggest impact? You can see employee productivity, 72% said that was one of the biggest impacts. For a lot of organizations, and it does vary by industry, but you think about your employee base, if most of your employees are salaried, you're going to continue to pay them their fully burdened hourly rate, regardless of whether they're productive or not. So that's a huge operational cost to the company. And then, of course, you can see morale being a huge issue as well. When companies tend to have repeated IT service disruptions over time, they start to lose faith in the IT department itself, and that can start to erode a lot of the trust and the quality of the relationships that you have with business owners. It could be line of business owners, functional heads, in charge of finance, HR, you name it. It starts to erode those trusted relationships, and the role of IT within the enterprise. You start being relegated to the back office as opposed to the type of IT department that can really make a difference in the front office, if you will, winning, serving, retaining customers, growing the top line of the business. So that employee morale, it's not to be underestimated. And of course, the lost employee productivity is one of the really large operational costs. And it's not to discount lost revenue, but that's always there. But I think it's an important point, and the data kind of shows just how important it is to a lot of the organizations that have actually experienced disasters. And downtime, I want to emphasize again, it's not disasters, it's downtime in general. So when you look at the actual incident management process itself within most IT shops, and you might not look exactly like this, but it looks a little bit something like this. Typically, it's a three-tiered approach. At the first tier, you have the service desk. On the slide, it's service center. You might call it service desk. You might call it help desk. You've got your monitoring tools in place. Usually, most incidents come in from an email, a call, other type of communication into the help desk from employees, partners, other stakeholders. It might actually come in automatically from a monitoring tool that's in place to monitor performance or availability. From there, Usually the help desk is working on it for 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. If they can't address the issue, they immediately escalate it to the command center. Command center in your organization might be your network operations center, your NOC. It might be your security operations center, your NOC. Might be your emergency center. What we find in a lot of organizations is they're consolidating those functions into a single command center. Might not be true in your organization. It's sort of where things are headed over time. If the command center can't address the issue within 30 minutes, again, maybe a little bit longer depending on the SLAs within your organization, it's then escalated again to subject matter experts. Now, a couple interesting things about incident management that makes it challenging is geographic distribution. The functions depicted here on the slide, they actually could be distributed geographically, across regions, across the globe, and for good reason. You're serving different constituencies, so you want to be available for different constituencies depending on their time zone, language support requirements. So you've got geographically distributed functions, and even within the function, you might have distribution. You might have multiple service desks, as an example. You might have a couple of command centers. Your subject matter experts, by definition, they're going to exist anywhere in the organization geographically that it makes sense. The other thing that I want to point out here that's a challenge, but it's also particularly salient to the conversation that we're having today around communication is, as we're escalating the incident to each one of these tiers, you're dealing with different functions, different individuals that are geographically distributed. Communication is the key to making sure that all of this runs pretty smoothly and that you're addressing the incident as quickly as possible. A couple other points I want to make just about the market in general within IT. There's a couple things that I think are happening that are going to make incident management even more challenging than it already is. The first thing is, if you look at most basic business processes today, and processes in particular that are customer-facing, there are very few processes from a customer placing an order to fulfilling that order to them paying for it, you name it, internal processes like HR, finance, et cetera, that aren't technology dependent. There's very, very few, and maybe in a couple of industries they're not quite as technology dependent, but by and large they're increasingly technology dependent. So what you find is that more and more applications within our environment are considered critical. And on the next slide, I'll show you some of the data that supports that. So more of our applications are critical, which means if there's any kind of downtime, you're getting pretty critical incidents that if you can't address are quickly escalated through those tiers. In discussions with clients, they're also telling me that they're experiencing more incidents than they ever have in the past. Some of that is due to the next trend, which is there's increasing technology complexity. So again, if you think about those technology-dependent business processes and all the apps and the infrastructure that's supporting them, a typical large enterprise could potentially have hundreds, if not thousands, of applications, supported by varying flavors of databases, operating systems, hypervisors, infrastructure for server storage network. And now also you have the fact that some portion of your apps might actually be hosted in a cloud service. Your employees are now digitally native. They've come to depend on mobile devices to do their jobs. And suddenly when you think about what it actually takes to get a business process back up and running end to end, and it really is about the full business service and the IT services that are supporting them that you have to get back up and running. When an incident comes in, getting to the root cause of the problem is so much more difficult than it ever was in the past. And as I mentioned before, you've got physical distribution of the functions, the service desk, the command center, the SMEs. Again, by design, you've got to serve individuals in different time zones and language requirements, et cetera. And as we mentioned at the opening, you've got enormous business pressure for more stringent SLAs. And the business wants visibility into the incidents as they're unfolding. So, right now the discussion for most downtime has shifted into one of seconds and minutes. Gone are the days when we used to talk about hours or days. They expect availability as well as performance requirements, to be much better than ever was in the past. But they also expect constant communication. So if an incident is submitted to the service desk and it needs to be escalated to the different tiers, and you're starting to miss SLAs. They want to understand, as it's unfolding at each step of the way, what you're doing to address it, and what your current expectations are for being able to resolve it. They're not going to stand for, this black box where incident goes in, no communication, and then at some point the service is back up and running. It needs to be constant communication along the way, and it needs to be intelligent communication as well. I think sometimes we as IT professionals, we're notorious for having very, very short and unhelpful and not very descriptive communications out to the business about what's actually happening. XYZ service is down. We'll let you know more. That kind of communication is not uncommon. So just some of the data that I referenced. As you can see here on the slide, a couple things I want to call out. Almost 70% of apps are now classified as either mission or business critical. And mission critical apps are the ones that if they're not available, the business is down. So those are the ones that are vital to the business. Business critical are the apps that, if they're unavailable, maybe the business can function, but you're going to function in a pretty diminished state. And then non-critical, and I'm actually not a huge fan of that term. I would never adopt it. For any IT pro on the phone, never adopt it. Call it something else. Call it business important. But those non-critical apps, I mean, that's the stuff like reporting where it's important to the long-term functioning of the business, but again, if it's not available for a day or two, you're okay. But again, the interesting point is that 70% of the apps are now either mission or business critical, and that's a huge sea change from, I would say, even just 3 years ago, 5 years ago. You would see, more like 10 to 20% of your apps were mission critical, maybe 30% were business critical, but the bulk of your apps actually fell into like business important. So again, it's totally flipped, and then you bring in that dependency, and it just means responding to an incident is so much more critical because it's actually vital to day-to-day business operations. So incident management effectiveness, how do we measure it? One of the most common, and I think one of the most appropriate metrics to use is mean time to resolution, also referred to as mean time to repair. And if you're going to understand how to improve mean time to resolution, I think one of the best ways to do it is to break it down into its component factors, which looks a little bit something like this. So the first is mean time to identify. So this is the time that it takes to detect that an incident has occurred. Again, notification comes into the service desk, or it could come directly from a monitoring tool that automatically detects as many incidents as possible, downtime, performance degradation, et cetera. Then it's mean time to know. Mean time to know, this is the time that it takes to locate the root cause of the incident. So you're doing analysis to try to pinpoint the fundamental issue. And again, this is getting much more difficult because we're talking about business processes that are dependent on a complex ecosystem of apps and different types of services, and you've got more of them. So it's getting more difficult to do. Mean time to fix. So this is the time that it takes to actually resolve the situation and ultimately restore the service. But again, this assumes that you've already figured out what the root cause of the actual issue is. And then, of course, the last stage is mean time to verify. This is the time that it takes to confirm the resolution with all the parties who are affected. So I think one of the biggest opportunities for most IT ops shops and all the individuals specifically focused on incident management is the mean time to know. If you look at the entire end-to-end process, this is usually where incident management teams spend the bulk of their time. Because if you think about it, incident comes into the service desk. If you can't address it, it then has to be escalated to the command center or your SOC or your NOC, whoever it is. If they can't address it, then they have to escalate it to subject matter experts. All these functions could be geographically distributed. The individuals could be geographically distributed. You have to identify the right individuals within each tier, particularly once you get up to that tier number 3 and it's the subject matter experts. You got to find the right individuals to address the problem and who's actually on call and available to address the problem. So this is where I think in particular communication can play a huge role. Again, you're going to rapidly mobilize people. You're going to increase the collaboration amongst those individuals. You're going to make sure you're contacting the people who are actually on call and should be working on the problem. So I think this is where the biggest opportunity lies. And again, it's the toughest part too, especially when we're trying to think about complexity and interdependencies. You might not always know who the right subject matter expert even is to start. So that's why the faster you can mobilize individuals and get them working on the problem, the more that you can actually reduce that overall mean time to repair. And it's not to say that communication doesn't play a role in the entire end-to-end process, but I think it has its biggest impact right there in the middle. But again, in the meantime to fix, once you've actually fixed the problem, you need to communicate out to the constituencies that were affected and actually verify that the fix worked. Again, that could be another opportunity where communication can decrease that it takes the time to do that process. So there's a little bit about the challenges. So let's talk about some of the benefits of communication, which I've hinted at. So again, during the incident, think about the 3 tiers, but also think about customers, partners. And your internal stakeholders from the business itself, you really need the ability to communicate information to the response team, your employees, partners, and customers during and after the incident. Think back to that challenge there. It kind of focused a lot on the business, but all of those constituents demand visibility throughout the incident. So again, it's going to be bidirectional. It's going to be bidirectional within the response team itself. It's going to be bidirectional between all of your core constituencies, employees, partners, customers. And your customers could be students, they could be patients, they could be citizens, whoever your customers are. It's important to have that two-way communication and constant visibility into what's actually happening. So some of the key features that I think offer some great benefits. One, automated communication. So you get assurance that the messages that you sent are delivered to the right people. And when I say people, like depending on the size of your organization and the size of your incident response team, and the command center, and all the subject matter individuals, you could be talking about tens, hundreds of individuals. These solutions that we're talking about today, these automated communication solutions, usually delivered as a service, they have the ability to scale to thousands of people, tens of thousands of people even. So if you think about potentially even having to automate communication to customers who have been affected by the downtime, these solutions are reliable and they're incredibly scalable to tens of thousands of individuals. So you think about replacing manual processes, manual call tree lists that you have for getting in touch with individuals. They automate the manual nature of call trees and other types of communication. And they give you assured delivery too. We'll get a little bit more into that assured delivery and the importance of it. They can send communication to any kind of device that you can think of, or mode of communication that you can think of. A traditional landline, a smartphone, email, text message, pager if your industry still uses those. You name the device, fax machine, you name the device, they can send a message to it. And as you'll hear about throughout the presentation is you can set up policies for who gets contacted, how they get contacted. If you fail to contact them, you can actually cycle through these different modes until you finally reach them. So it's incredibly sophisticated types of communication as well. So it's a lot more intelligent than just sending out some kind of blast. Again, yeah, policy-based, so it's prioritize and customize different groups. So you think about all those different constituencies, different people within the response team. You can set the policies for multiple attempts to different devices and groups. So again, it's customized and it's intelligent. We're not just talking about dumb blast communication out. Two-way and live, so you can actually not only send information to individuals on the response team and the other constituents, but with polling functions, with responses via email, responses via SMS text, you're actually enabling two-way communication. It's about sending and receiving information. If you reach an individual live, you can even do things like bridge them into a live call, bridge them into a conference call, so that now all of a sudden you have your subject matter experts all on the phone live. So again, it's not just one-way notification, it's two-way. It's up to date. these solutions have the ability to integrate with in-house systems. Could be HR, it could be Active Directory, to keep contact information up to date. They can also integrate with other solutions to make sure that on-call and schedules for the response team is actually kept in the system, so it actually knows exactly who to contact. Again, a lot different than if you're manually tracking things in worksheets and Word documents and internal sites. This is all kept up to date in the solution itself. Visibility. You're going to get real-time reporting. You're going to know whether messages were delivered successfully, if people actually responded to the message, the specific contents of that response, where they were bridged into another call. You're going to have very easy visibility into who was contacted and whether they were successfully contacted. So it's a way of actually tracking the incident itself, and the unfolding of the incident itself and who's working on it. So some of the benefits that I've already alluded to, but just to kind of reiterate them, faster mobilization and effective collaboration. So imagine you're quickly able to connect everyone who's on your response team, the right individuals and subject matter experts. You can quickly see what tasks they've completed and the status of the overall incident as it unfolds. Faster decision making, so you're getting people bridged into a call to make faster decisions. You can use things like polling function to initiate emergency changes by gaining approval. So faster decision making. Automation, I mentioned it throughout here, but you're replacing a lot of manual procedures that are totally unreliable. Particularly if we're talking about an incident that is being escalated all the way up through the command center, then to the subject matter experts. At a time of stress is the worst time to actually rely on manual procedures. You want it to be automated. Continuous improvement. When it's all said and done, you also have the ability to go back through the reports and look for opportunities to make things more effective. What type of communication was effective? How long did it take people to respond? Where were the response lags? So it helps you identify patterns that you can then later address, so that the next time a similar incident happens, you can actually, again, squeeze that mean time to know, and then you can apply the fix, verify the fix, and overall reduce the mean time to resolution. So the last section, so again, we've kind of gone over the challenges. We talked about the role of communication. What I want to do now is just wrap up in the next 5 minutes on critical selection criteria. So again, this is the kind of advice that I give to Forrester clients about, if you do decide to go with one of these solutions, what you should look for when you're evaluating them. First thing I actually recommend is opt for a hosted service. When you think about the scale of these solutions, it's not something that you want to try to replicate yourself on premise. These providers have made massive investments in IT and telephony infrastructure. They have relationships with telecom providers. Go for the hosted service. And also, when it is more of a true GR event as opposed to just the kind of tier 1 incident that might come in, you don't want to have a DR plan for your actual automated communication solution. So I always recommend going with a hosted service, although some providers do have the ability to deploy their solution on-prem. The vast majority of the industry, even in highly regulated industries, financial services, government, they all go with hosted solutions. Ease of setup. You think about the different individuals that make up the incident response team, IT managers, senior executives, business executives that might want to be using this. You want that intuitive GUI, setup admin, ease of reporting, running reports, you name it. Consultative services, these solutions, they're pretty easy to get up and running, but I think some people initially get overwhelmed. They have a lot of services based on existing clients where they've seen this before, where they can help you get up and running with some of the most important policies and rules to put in place. They have different types of training, in-person, virtual, other types of training that's available. They can really help you get up and running pretty quickly. The tool itself, the service itself, will have sample templates actually and sample policies built into it for the most common types of scenarios that come in. So again, it's another way to just quickly get yourself up and running. Integration, I've mentioned this before, one of the ways that they keep information up to date is they integrate with HR and AD systems for contact up-to-date contact information. People can also add additional information that they want to add in there. They can actually integrate with your service desk apps, again, to kind of automate as it's escalated, it will actually automatically trigger the communication based on those policies. You might actually already have a critical communication platform for other types of crises deployed. They can also integrate with those, or it might actually even be the same platform if you choose to extend it. So there's a lot of integration that you can look for that's pretty easily enabled. If it's not out of the box, it's very easily enabled. Activation. Most of it should be policy. You can also manually activate it. You could do it from web. You could do mobile, operator support, you name it. There's multiple ways that you can actually activate it. Again, web, mobile, automated, operator support. Message delivery. I mentioned this before. You can send messages to any device with automated escalation built into it. Just make sure that the devices and modes of communication that you want to send it to are supported. Security features, role-based access controls. Obviously, like depending on the individual, you want to limit what they have access to. Secure delivery. So in some cases, you're sending information that might contain sensitive information. You can actually require a recipient to enter a PIN in order to access the message. Those are just some of the security features of the service itself that you'll look for. We'll talk about later about service provider security. I mentioned two-way and live communication, the ability to allow people to respond to the notification with information, the ability to bridge individuals into conferences, polling functionality, anything that's supporting interaction as opposed to just one-way communications. Think about how you can actually engage individuals and make it interactive. Monitoring and reporting, you want dashboards for things such as message delivery, message sent, responses received, tracking, customized reporting. One of the powerful things of this is visibility. SLA and customer service, depending on your organization, if you're global, you're going to want somebody who can provide customer service globally, offer you 24/7 customer support. A lot of these providers will not necessarily offer you a guarantee, but they can give you assurances around timely message delivery, so that's very, very important. International support, again, global delivery and what kind of language support they offer within the service. Testing, so if you're not testing, you're not ready. That's what I always tell people around incident management, DR, and HA. You need the ability to conduct a certain number of tests per year. How easy is it to schedule that? What kind of test support services do they offer? And then again, this is a hosted or a cloud-based service. Just like any other hosted or cloud-based service, you're going to look for certain provider security and resiliency, proven scale and capacity, encryption of sensitive data. Do they have appropriate certifications that sort of speak to their overall security maturity? I always look for Tier 4 data center specs. Again, global data centers, particularly for large organizations that have global presence, there is a patchwork of privacy laws that limits the transfer of information outside of country borders. Again, if the provider has global data centers, it really helps you comply with local privacy laws. Just makes things a lot simpler if you're for a global enterprise. And of course, the resiliency of the provider themselves. Making sure that in any kind of incident, they're also going to be available. You don't have to worry about, the BCDR plan for your own communication service. So with that, I'll wrap it up with just one more thought. When you think about the benefits of automated communication, I think it's really clear. I see more and more organizations actually integrating it into their incident management response service. But what I would say is that, it's a journey. It's not an all-or-nothing approach. And it's not to say that you have to implement it for every single type of incident. When you think back to the tiers and the different functions within your incident management, service desk, command center, subject matter experts, you might only choose for the most critical incidents that you're going to deploy a solution like this, or it's going to be the place where you start. And then you can start to expand over time. So don't think that you have to completely redesign your end-to-end service today. your end-to-end incident management process today in order to fit this in there. You start small, you expand, and it's a journey over time. So with that, I'll just kind of put my contact information up there. But at this point, I'm going to be turning it over to Claudia.
So hey, thank you very much, Stephanie. That was really helpful to lay the groundwork for the importance of communications in IT incident alerting and management. So what I wanted to do today was just spend a little bit of time talking about the highlights of the Everbridge system, just to give you a flavor of some of the kinds of things that we can do. So Stephanie talked a lot about minimizing the downtime and all the components that would contribute to minimizing and lowering that mean time to repair. And we all know that the biggest piece of that bar is that the mean time to know. And part of that trying to reduce that is around really trying to rally the right people, the right experts, and the people that can help solve a problem. Because as many of you know, during the course of an IT incident, oftentimes someone might grab the problem and try to solve it, but it turns out that it's more complicated than they thought. So all of a sudden they're scrambling to find resources. They're looking at things like manual call trees, who's the expert for the database that's on schedule. If you're in a 24/7 type operation where you follow the sun, you add that extra complexity of global communication. All of this starts to add and really lengthen the time to resolve issues as you try to sort through who's the right set of resources to solve certain problems. So at Everbridge, our goal is to help automate that whole process for you and all the complexities that come with that. So the first element of that is really being able to contact the right people on their preferred devices until they confirm. So there's a lot in that, right? First of all, it's being able to automate who the right people are, so being able to select on-call resources automatically, not having to go to a spreadsheet or a little chart that you have on a sticky note, in the network operations center. It's really being able to just know who's on call, who the experts are you staffed properly, and automate that whole process, and what other individuals need to be aware, et cetera. And then keep, bugging people until on the devices and paths that they're interested in until they actually confirm. You also have the opportunity with Everbridge to really automate and set the desired response. So one-click conference calls, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Escalating based on certain business rules. So for certain incidents, you might want really fast escalation, and if it's in the middle of the night, you want to wake people up all the way up the command chain. But for other incidents, if it's a lower priority, you may have a certain other set of people that should be involved, but you don't want to wake people up, et cetera. So being able to say who should know and what means do you want to make them aware of a situation is important as well. And then the key thing here is with all of these processes is being able to have an audit trail of who actually responded and how long it took for those responses. So you can actually improve your processes over time. You'll start to understand what contact paths work better under what conditions, et cetera. If there's people who continually are late in responding, you can take corrective action to make sure they understand how important it is to respond to these emergency situations. So these are the kinds of things that Everbridge automates for you. And just to give an example, let's imagine that there's an outage, there's a server outage, and that's reported through ServiceNow. You can integrate right into Everbridge, and Everbridge will automatically take the specific information from that ServiceNow ticket and populate an incident management ticket within Everbridge and send out and automate that notification. It's also important to note here that you can have other systems spawn off these incident management items, as well as you can also fill the form out manually, etc. So you've got a lot of different ways in which you can automate the instantiation of an incident within the Everbridge system. So once that incident takes off, there's certain things that can be automated really easily that we talked about earlier. So in this case, the system time is 10:33 a.m. in the morning. We know in these regular business hours we're going to go after these people, focusing on email, because people are typically sitting at their desk, SMS, phone. If it happened to be after hours, we'd use a different set of contact paths and a different set of people, because Everbridge knows, based on your business rules, how you want to reach people under certain circumstances. So that process is automated. Once that incident is kicked off, everyone gets a notification, and it keeps working until someone actually confirms and takes ownership of that particular issue. And by the way, you may have situations where not only do you want one person involved, but you need both a database expert and an application expert. So you can set up quotas. I need a person of this skill combined with a person of another skill. There's all kinds of ways to automate those rules within Everbridge. We talked a little bit, and Stephanie mentioned the importance of being able to get everyone on a conference bridge. Well, how many times have you been involved in the, what's John's email, let me send him the conference bridge number, let me make sure that Susan is aware as well. And to actually set up the conference bridge, get people on it, can burn 10 or 15 minutes. Why not automate that? Once you know that you need a panel of experts on a conference call, just kick off an IT incident and send out that notification and have people automatically join the conference bridge. So with Everbridge, everyone on the team who needs to be on that conference bridge will be alerted again via the path that they prefer. They will be able to either click within an SMS message, an email, or if they actually get a phone call, all they need to do is press 1 to join the conference bridge. No waiting around, emailing people, et cetera, et cetera. It's all automated, taking literally, 10, 15 minutes right out of that whole process. One of the other key elements that Stephanie talked about, and I think this is really, really critical, is that downtime destroys employee productivity. And it's not only the productivity itself that kind of drags people down, it's the impact of the morale when systems are down and people don't know what's going on. So one of the key things as you're trying to resolve these issues, et cetera, is in parallel is to make sure that you inform your stakeholders and customers with the pertinent information that you can provide them. And again, there's always some thought that needs to go behind this in regards to having a balance around, communicating to people too much about a particular incident, not enough, or giving them information about an application that they really don't care about. Why are you telling me about the lab system being down when I work in finance? I really don't care. I keep getting these things that look like spam to me. So again, what Everbridge enables you to do is automate the process of informing stakeholders with updated messages delivered to people on the devices that they prefer. And furthermore, we enable you to actually let your stakeholders and customers decide for themselves what services they're interested in, in subscribing to. So we have a member portal that you can simply customized very easily for your organization to gather the right information around what applications your constituents are most interested in, what services they're interested in, and also in regards to getting updates on these services, how do they want to be contacted? And this is huge. Part of the problem of employee productivity and morale is when they don't know what's going on. And this is a way to make sure that they understand, A, how hard you're working to solve the problem, right? You know, when a system is down, no one's sitting around, you know, staring at each other. Everyone's scrambling. Well, your constituents need to know that, and then give them some sense of, you know, when things are going to return to normal, et cetera. And notice that when we gather contact information, this is all about a global world. So you identify the services you're interested in and how that, you know, how you want to be contacted about these services. And you can select, you know, what country you're in, so that all that global country delivery will be taken care of automatically, as well as, you know, email or a whole other host of other communication paths that we support at Everbridge. So, you know, I could spend another hour going over the Everbridge IT alerting system. We'd love to spend the time with you to, you know, discuss some of these critical selection criteria that, you know, that Stephanie talked about, and how we satisfy, you know, those requirements. You know, but in the interest of time today, we'd like to invite you to, you know, to respond and engage us, so we can have some of these discussions with you and help you automate your, you know, your specific processes. Before I sign out, I did want to just let you know a little bit about Everbridge's background. We were founded in 2002. You know, we're a global organization. We have 2,500 clients today, and we're really the leading provider of critical communications in a whole variety of areas, verticals, et cetera. In our contact database, we have over 50 million contacts, and we send over 150, you know, million messages per year, and that's, you know, growing, you know, fairly dramatically. Just to give you a sense of some of our customers and the verticals in which we serve, you know, I just, you can take a look at this. But in closing, I would like to thank Stephanie for her time today. That was really helpful for everyone, and also thank everyone for joining the webinar. And we look forward now to taking, you know, some of your specific questions. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you so much. At this point, we're going to open it up to questions from our audience. So just as a reminder, you may submit your questions by typing a question into the open text field in the questions panel on your screen and submitting it to all panelists. And we'll answer as many questions as time allows. We'll try to follow up with you after the webinar if we're not able to answer your question live. So our first question, I think, is probably for both Stephanie and Claudia. So I'll pass it to Stephanie first, and then Claudia, I'll turn it over to you. Can you talk about the difference between communication around operational or disruptive incidents and IT incidents specifically?
This is Stephanie. I guess, you know, operational incidents, I mean, this might be a lot of your traditional, like, business continuity and maybe even emergency management type of incidents. A lot of it depends on how your organization sets up these functions. Business continuity might fall under another executive within the company, might actually be outside of IT. In some cases, it's inside of IT, often reporting to the CIO or even the CISO. You know, if it's outside of IT, oftentimes the focus of these communication solutions, it still really is. It's a somewhat similar story. It is about the response team, so your business continuity response team. It's about communicating with employees. Employees in a major operational event often don't know what their individual roles and responsibilities are. and how the operational event affects them. Do they go to a different location for work that day? Do they work from home, where they can go for more information, et cetera? And it continues to be customers and partners, that external communication. There's some additional consideration. There's other stakeholders. Could be everything from first responders to other public entities, but it's a somewhat similar kind of value proposition. Although, again, some of the scale, you're talking about needing to communicate with all your employees, so that's why the scale of these solutions, being able to reach tens of thousands of individuals, becomes important. Reaching all of your customers becomes important. And then, as I mentioned, if a report does report within IT, as I kind of showed on that slide there, I have seen companies really consolidating all of incident management, regardless of the nature of the incident, operational or IT, into a single command center. So it's very possible that you're actually going to use the same communication tool for both operational as well as IT incident management, and it can be done within the same tool because you're just going to craft your policies based on the appropriate scenario. So that's just my quick perspective. Claudia, you might have additional insight.
Yeah, I think that's right on. What we're seeing is that the things that are similar about operational issues and IT issues is that at the end of the day, you need to know who to contact and how to get a hold of them. And one of the things and why people are consolidating these systems is that you want a single source for that contact database, so that you don't have to manage all that information in your organization in multiple places. So that, for example, if there's a fire and in your building, obviously you need to quickly get those first responders going and get that and you need to get people out of the building safely. All of those things. So you have to use mass communication to make sure everyone knows what's happening, etc. That's that one-to-many. You also have that one, to few to get the first responders going. And then that also leads to IT issues. And some of the same players are involved, and you're also communicating to that same employee base. So instead of having to use multiple tools to manage that communication process as it touches different things within the organization, and similar audiences, the employees in Building 4, et cetera, it's much better to have that managed in one place, for one, just overall efficiency in managing that contact database and the overall total cost of ownership of the tool itself.
Great. Thank you, Claudia and Stephanie. So it looks like we have a question for Claudia. So certainly, talking to disaster recovery professionals and business continuity professionals outside of just IT alerting, how does Everbridge itself handle disaster recovery for our infrastructure?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we have a a hyper redundant environment. It's important for us to make sure that under any circumstances that we can always provide emergency notifications, since we do serve many customers in times of earthquakes, major disasters, etc. Not only do we have redundant data centers, but we also leverage the cloud for expanded capacity. So and if you look at something like a Hurricane Sandy, during the course of a couple of days, we sent over 10 million messages, or broadcasts actually, 10 million messages during that time frame. So we can expand under any kind of circumstances and handle large capacity and volume.
Great, thank you. So our next question is for Stephanie. What's the relation of the mean time to resolution and RTO? Is the mean time to resolution part of RTO?
Recovery time objective is actually your service level agreement and understanding with the business about what the MTTR should be. I think maybe what often causes confusion, I think, and why I do like the focus on mean time to resolution. A lot of times when you just focus on recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives, again, that's your agreement with the business. IT often thinks of it as simply restoring an individual application or restoring the individual IT service. They don't really think about it as restoring the entire business process so that the business employees can actually conduct transactions and begin serving customers again. So sometimes you get an individual app back up and running, you get an individual IT service back up and running, you shake hands, you high five, and the business is still upset because they're actually still not able to do their jobs because there's some portion of the business function that's technology dependent that still isn't back up and running. So I think mean time to resolution really focuses you on what it really takes to get the end-to-end business function back up and running. So you fix it, then you verify it with the appropriate stakeholders, and only at the end of that is it finally time to say, okay, we've done it. So RTO, RPO is your agreement with the business. Mean time to resolution is your actual execution of that when an incident occurs.
Great, thank you. So I have another one that this time I'll field to Claudia first, and then I'll field to Stephanie. But this is someone who comes from an IT service provider, and they say one of our challenges is managing communications with customers during outages or incidents, who often turn very quickly to social media to complain. What's your recommendation for best practices around managing these communications?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So there's a couple of there's a number of things there. The first thing to do is to find ways to communicate with your constituents before they have the opportunity to complain. So try and take a proactive approach to communication so that false rumors don't start, or you can ensure that you can try and control that social media as best as possible. Second thing is you can also, within the Everbridge platform, monitor social media to see if you're actually getting complaints about something that you may not even be aware of. And you can also leverage Everbridge to publish directly to social media, so to quell any kind of false rumors, or to try and set the record straight, etc. So there's really three elements there, right? There's the proactive communication, so you can hopefully stop bad stuff happening on social media. Second is monitor social media, and Everbridge provides you a way to do that by filters, so you don't, you can get just the information from social media that you're most interested in. You don't have to wade through 40 million a day or whatever it is. And then the third thing is actually publishing to social media with, again, updates that are pertinent and in a timely fashion.
Great, thank you. And Stephanie, anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would just agree with Claudia. I think the most important thing that you can do to head that off is to get out in front of it. There was, a couple years ago, there was a financial services firm in the UK that had a major IT outage, and customers didn't know about it until they, started trying to pay for dinner with their credit cards. And that's when they realized that there was some kind of outage or some sort of issue. If you can head it off ahead of time, it's not that customers won't be disappointed, but they're likely to be less vicious on social media if you have a proactive and mature response to an actual incident.
Right. Great. Thank you so much. So I know we have a lot of questions that we haven't been able to get to, but unfortunately we have run out of time. We're just at the hour. So I would like to thank both Stephanie and Claudia for a great session, and also to thank all of our attendees who are able to join us today. If you missed any part of the webinar, be sure to look through the slides on our blog. You'll also receive an email with a link to the slides and the recording in the next few days. If you haven't already, please take a moment to follow us on Twitter at Everbridge, and join our group on LinkedIn, Everbridge Incident Management and Emergency Notification Professionals. For those of you interested in requesting a demo of the Everbridge system, please visit everbridge.com/request-demo. And thank you all for your participation in today's Expert Insights webinar, IT Incident and Disaster Alerting, using communication to improve response. We hope to see you all online again soon. Have a great day. Thank you.